I'm talking with Dan Spader, the founder of Sun Life, and more recently with Global Youth Initiatives. Dan, many of us know of you from the Sun Life era, and for some of us, you've disappeared. So before we jump into our formal topic, talk to us a little bit about Global Youth Initiative.
Yeah, well, about 10 years ago, I moved to begin to work with all of our different partners that began to go overseas. So really for about the last close to 12, 15 years now, most of my work has been international. I think as you knew, Sunlight kind of grew out of a study of the sun's life, high degree of commitment to teaching students to multiply their lives and other students. That began to multiply and grow, and as a result of that, other youth leaders began to come and say, how are you doing that? And so we began to train youth pastors, and out of that, then we began to train pastors and elders and church leaders. But in the middle of the 90s, late 90s, some of our young leaders began to go overseas, and we kind of allowed that to happen. We just kind of watched it organically happen. And so it was 15 years ago, I guess it was 14 years ago, I stepped into the role working with some of those younger leaders. Globally, we were in about 20 countries in 2005, 2004. And so that's what I've been doing the last 12, 13 years, working globally with Global Youth Initiative. And we're in about 116 countries as our last measurement with staff in those countries. We have multiplying organizations, which is the way we measure it, organizations that are in a multiplication mode. In about 66, I think we're up to, just as the last measurement. So we're encouraged. God's doing a great work.
Well, you use the word multiply and multiplication several times, and that also occurs in your latest book, 4-Chair Discipling. You made an interesting statement in it. Jesus's ministry agenda was to birth a movement of multiplying disciples. What's your basis for saying that?
Well, his laser focus was on multiplication. I mean, his mission was not to reach the world. It was to make disciples capable of reaching the world. And from the very day one, he was a laser focus on reproduction. I love how you think there's one time when you find Jesus full of joy by the Holy Spirit. 3 times he wept, but one time he's full of joy by the Spirit. And that's in that Luke 10:21 passage. And that's 3.5 years into his ministry as he's moving up toward Jerusalem. In Luke 9, he sends out the 12 disciples 2 by 2. They were like the leadership team, the elders. They come back full of joy. Jesus debriefs them. But in Luke 10, he's sending out the 72. That's the next generation, what I call the lay people. Why? Because his passion was to create this movement of multiplying disciples. And when they came back full of joy, Jesus was full of joy by the Holy Spirit. He said, I watched Satan fall. You understand things and kings and prophets of old didn't understand. His laser focus was on creating a movement of multiplication. Anywhere you look in the scriptures, like growing up on a farm, fruit is always a picture of multiplication. In John 15, the last words Jesus to his disciples, we talk about no fruit, fruit, more fruit, and then much fruit. He said, this is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. At Southeast, where I've been doing consulting training, we say you haven't made a disciple until they make a disciple, because his whole DNA is multiplication. It's the way we got to think.
Wow, that is powerful. Dan Spader, thank you so much for your insight.
My pleasure.